At a high-end baby boutique, a pregnant black woman arrives alone, hoping to find the perfect items for the little angel growing inside her. But instead of being welcomed, she's met with cruel insults from a white employee who mocks her as a discarded woman. Moments later, she's falsely accused of theft and dragged to security like a criminal. What the staff doesn't know is that her husband, calm, relentless and dangerously powerful, is already on his way. And when he walks through that door, they will receive a lesson that will never be forgotten. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you watching from. We love to hear your thought. The morning sun cast a golden hue across West 85th Street as Angela Jackson stepped out of her cab, one hand gently resting on her swollen belly, the other adjusting the knit cardigan draped over her shoulders. Leaves crunched softly underfoot, rustled by the passing wheels of expensive strollers and jogging shoes. On this side of town, the sidewalks gleamed and the air smelled faintly of high-end coffee and blooming chrysanthemums. This was the Upper West Side, polished, historic, reserved. And for Angela, it felt like stepping into a different world. She paused outside the tall arched windows of Bliss Baby & Company, a posh baby boutique that looked more like an art gallery than a retail space. Inside, ivory mannequins posed with cashmere onesies, glass shelving sparkled under track lighting, and a jazz instrumental floated through the air like perfume. A hand-painted sign read "By appointment only." Angela exhaled slowly, smoothing the front of her modest floral dress as her eyes flicked to the glass, catching her own reflection. Her cocoa-brown skin contrasted against the pale marble backdrop inside. She wasn't dressed flashy, no designer bags or heels, but she was neat, warm-looking, maternal. A scarf wrapped her braids gently, and her face, round from pregnancy, still carried grace and thoughtfulness. She whispered to herself, "We made it, baby," her voice soft, soothing, as if talking to her unborn child. Then she smiled, small, proud, and stepped forward, pushing open the heavy door with both determination and hope. The bell chimed. Nobody turned. Inside, the boutique buzzed with quiet elegance. A mother in pearls examined hand-stitched bibs with a sales associate. Another, in heels too high for practicality, discussed stroller suspensions. Angela stood momentarily by the entrance, her presence unnoticed, like background noise in a world that wasn't hers. She cleared her throat lightly. A young receptionist finally glanced up, blinked, and approached with a clipboard. Can I help you?" she asked, more surprised than welcoming. Angela's tone was gentle but practiced, as if this wasn't the first time she had to prove she belonged. "Yes, Angela Jackson, I have a 9:30 appointment. My husband called earlier. He's running about 25 minutes late, but I'm here to get started." The girl hesitated, lips parting, eyes quickly scanning the appointment book, then settling on Angela's belly. "Okay, wait here a moment." She walked off briskly. Angela stayed in place, hands folded over her stomach. She tried not to look nervous, but her eyes wandered, to the price tags on the bassinets, to the careful arrangement of gender-neutral swaddles, to the way the other women barely glanced her way. For a moment, she thought about turning around. Maybe she should have waited for Jonathan like he'd offered. But this wasn't about the boutique. It wasn't about money. It was about something else, a promise. A moment of joy she wanted to experience fully. This was her first child, after years of trying, after miscarriage, after doubt. Suddenly, a voice snapped her back to reality, curt, clipped, edged with something unkind. "Excuse me, you're Angela?" Angela turned to see a woman in a tailored pantsuit and severe bob haircut, maybe mid-40s, polished in an artificial way. Her name tag read Bethany, assistant manager. Angela nodded. "Yes, that's me." Bethany gave a tight, reluctant smile. "Follow me." Her eyes flicked down to Angela's shoes, flat, practical, then to the hand-me-down purse slung across her shoulder. Her expression barely disguised the judgment. Angela's heartbeat picked up. She felt the weight of the stares, even the ones unspoken. But she held her chin slightly higher. She followed Bethany into the boutique's main floor, telling herself this would all be worth it. That the baby kicks she felt this morning meant strength, not stress. But as Bethany led her past curated aisles of silk blankets and handmade wooden mobiles, the air grew heavier, not because of the scent of luxury candles, but because Angela could already sense it. Something wasn't right. And what started as a dream was slowly shifting into something else. Angela followed Bethany through the boutique like an unwelcome echo. Every click of Bethany's heels across the marble floor was precise, almost theatrical, as if designed to remind Angela of who was leading and who was following. The showroom was immaculate, curated like a museum, and yet every time Angela reached for an item, a soft plush rattle, a handmade quilt, Bethany's eyes cut back over her shoulder like surveillance cameras. Not one smile, not one offer of assistance, only silence, brittle and stretched tight. Bethany finally stopped by a display of minimalist cribs crafted from sustainable oak and gestured half-heartedly. "Here," she said, her voice flat, "are best sellers. Scandinavian design, lead-free, obviously." Her words rolled off her tongue like memorized lines, but the warmth of customer service was absent. She wasn't selling, she was tolerating. Angela reached out to touch the curved railing of one crib, her fingers lightly grazing the smooth wood, and said softly, "It's beautiful. My husband and I have been dreaming of this." Her voice carried sincerity, but Bethany didn't respond. Instead she folded her arms, gave Angela a sideways glance, and muttered under her breath, "I'm sure you have." Angela looked up sharply, "I'm sorry." Her tone was still polite, but firmer now, threaded with quiet steel. Bethany's lips curled ever so slightly, then she looked Angela up and down, from the scarf over her braids to the visibly worn strap of her purse. "It's just," she said, voice suddenly louder, cutting the calm. "Some people come in here thinking it's a photo op. You know, pretend shopping, take a few pics for the gram. But this is not that kind of store." Angela blinked, stunned. "I'm not here for photos." Bethany leaned in, smiling without softness. "Sure you're not." Her eyes darted to Angela's belly. "And the father? Is he meeting you here, or not in the picture anymore?" The question sliced deeper than Angela expected. She felt her jaw clench, her breath catch in her throat. "My husband will be here shortly," she answered, her voice low and even, like someone holding back a wave. "He called earlier." Bethany raised both brows in mock surprise, as if that was the most unbelievable part of the morning. "Of course, sure, he'll be here. Just running late, I'm sure." Then almost gleefully, she added, "Not uncommon." Angela's hands tightened around the edge of her bag, her chest burned, not from embarrassment, but from insult. The way Bethany said "not uncommon," the tone so pointed, it was no longer just about customer service, it was about who she was, or rather who Bethany had already decided she was. Bethany took a step closer, her voice dropping into a whisper lined with cruelty. "Listen, I've been in this job a long time. I know the type. Big belly, no ring, wants to feel important for a morning." Her head tilted, mockingly sympathetic. "But it's not my fault if you're left doing this alone, sweetheart." Angela stared back at her, trying to keep her breathing steady, but her fingers trembled ever so slightly as she touched her belly, not for balance, but protection. Her lips parted, ready to respond, but nothing came out. The disrespect was too sharp, too personal, and it stole her words. Bethany turned away with a smirk, beginning to rearrange a rack of tiny booties. "Feel free to browse, but do be mindful. These items are delicate and expensive." Angela stood there, frozen, heart pounding in her ears, the warmth of the morning now long gone. All she'd wanted was a moment of joy, to feel seen, cherished as a mother-to-be. But in this place, she was invisible in plain sight, or worse, a target. She took one deep breath, then another. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was quiet but unshaking. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "You don't get to talk to me like that." Bethany didn't turn. She simply shrugged. "We'll see." And with that, Angela took a cautious step back, suddenly unsure whether to keep going, or walk out and wait for Jonathan. But something told her, this wasn't over. Angela took a slow step toward the display of pastel onesies, her breath still shaky, her chest tight. Her mind wanted to flee, to walk out and never look back, but something heavier rooted her in place. Pride, stubbornness, or maybe just the unbearable thought that if she left now, she'd be surrendering her joy to a stranger who didn't deserve that power. She touched a tiny hat embroidered with baby ducks, trying to refocus. The fabric was soft against her fingertips, so different from the harshness that had just been thrown at her. But just as her thoughts began to settle, the storm returned. Bethany appeared again, this time flanked by another employee, a younger girl, red lipstick too bright, face already tense. The manager's voice sliced through the quiet like a blade wrapped in honey. Maya, can you do a quick visual check on aisle 3, make sure everything's still in place? The implication hung in the air like smog. Angela looked up, eyes narrowing. Excuse me. Her tone was firmer now, sharper, but still measured. Bethany feigned confusion, glancing around theatrically. Oh, no need to get defensive, honey. We've just had incidents, you know. People thinking they can slip things into their purse when no one's watching. She paused, gaze landing deliberately on Angela's bag. Better safe than sorry. Angela's body tensed, her hands curled into fists by her sides, nails digging into her palms. Her voice dropped, now low and serious, her southern accent pressing harder into the vowels. You think I came here to steal? Bethany chuckled, not kindly, but dismissively, like someone enjoying the control. I didn't say that. But if the shoe fits. Angela stepped forward, eyes locked, fire rising behind them. Say it. If you're going to call me a thief, have the guts to say it out loud. Bethany's smile vanished for a split second, just enough to show the mask cracking, then returned with venom. You people always get loud when you're cornered. Typical. Her voice wasn't even hushed now. Look, I don't care what story you told the front desk. No ring, no husband, and judging by your purse, no money. You walked in here alone, thinking you could pretend for a few minutes, take some pics, maybe post a few hashtags like #mama in style. It's pathetic, really. Angela's mouth parted. For a moment she couldn't breathe, not from shame, but from sheer disbelief at the boldness of the attack. Her heart pounded so hard, it echoed in her ears. But she didn't cry. She wouldn't give this woman that satisfaction. She straightened up, spine rigid as steel. Her voice was calm now, dangerously calm. You don't know me, and what you're doing right now. This is more than rude, it's hateful, and it's wrong. Bethany leaned in closer, voice low, smug and sharp. What's wrong is you thinking you belong here. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. The young employee, Maya, shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the two women. She opened her mouth, maybe to speak, maybe to walk away, but before anything else could be said, the store's security alarm gave a small beep, a signal for internal staff only. Bethany didn't break eye contact as she tapped her earpiece, and then slowly, deliberately, she spoke into her mic. Security, we may have a situation here. Angela blinked. What are you doing? Bethany's voice turned theatrical. Guest is becoming aggressive, possible concealment of merchandise, requesting backup. Angela's heart dropped. Are you serious? Her voice cracked, but it was disbelief, not fear. Bethany didn't answer. She turned away, leaving Angela standing there, surrounded by pastel blankets and judgment. Within moments, 2 security guards appeared from the back hallway. One gestured toward her calmly, the other already eyeing her bag. Angela instinctively took a step back. You can't be serious. I didn't do anything. The taller guard said, Mayam, we just need to speak with you privately. Please come with us. Angela's voice rose, trembling with fury. No, I'm not going anywhere until my husband gets here. He'll be here any minute. Bethany crossed her arms. Of course, the magical husband who's always almost here. Angela's world spun, her hands instinctively shielded her belly. Her mind screamed to stay calm, but the pressure building inside her was unbearable. She had done nothing wrong. She came here with hope, and now, they were treating her like trash. As the guards stepped in closer, one reaching gently for her arm, Angela froze, stuck between fight and fear. Angela didn't resist, but her entire body stiffened as the guard's hand brushed her elbow. The air around her felt like it had thickened, too dense to breathe properly. Her voice was sharp now, but strained, pulled from the depths of someone trying to hold herself together while being slowly unraveled. Don't touch me, I'll walk. Her words were clipped, quiet, but shaking with fire barely held in check. The security guards exchanged a glance but nodded. She followed them down a narrow hallway behind the boutique's main floor, a hallway not meant for customers, lit with cold fluorescent bulbs that buzzed overhead like flies circling something dead. Each step she took echoed, not just on the linoleum floor, but inside her, a drumbeat of disbelief, fury and pain. They led her into a small room barely larger than a closet, walls painted in dull gray, a single metal chair sitting in front of a blank desk. There was no window, no one offered her a seat. Angela stood tall, arms crossed over her belly protectively, glaring at the camera blinking red in the corner of the ceiling. "Am I under arrest?" Her voice was flat, exhausted now, but still proud. The taller guard shook his head, trying to sound neutral. "No ma'am, we just have to check the situation. They said you were seen placing something in your bag." Angela's laugh came out bitter and sharp, almost a bark. "They lied." She lied. "I haven't taken a damn thing. I've barely touched anything in that store." The second guard, younger, looked uneasy. "If we can just look through your bag real quick, then this can be over." Angela clutched her purse tighter. "You want to dig through my things because a woman didn't like how I looked when I walked in. That's what this is." Her eyes flared, her voice tightening. "You know what this is, don't pretend you don't." There was a long pause, heavy, stretched. No one responded. Finally, Angela slammed her bag down on the table. "Fine. Look through it. You won't find anything except lotion, a prenatal vitamin bottle and a grocery list." As the older guard cautiously opened the purse and began sifting through, she crossed her arms again, eyes fixed on the wall like she could will herself out of that room by force of will alone. Her jaw clenched, her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. She wanted to scream, she wanted to cry. She wanted someone, anyone, to see her and not just her skin. The guard finished, slowly repacked her bag and stepped back. "It's clean." Angela laughed again, this time hollow. "Of course it is. I told you." There was a brief crackle in the radio clipped to the younger guard's shoulder. A voice murmured, unintelligible but low and quick. The guard pressed the mic. "Yeah, she's in here. No items found. She says her husband is on the way." Angela's voice was ice now. "Give me my phone. I want to call him, now." The older guard hesitated. "Manager said no phone use during incident review." Angela's eyes burned. "You've taken my dignity. You will not take my voice." Before either man could respond, the door creaked open. Bethany stepped in, arms crossed, smug satisfaction painted across her face like lipstick. "Well, did we find anything?" The guard cleared his throat. "No, bag was clean." Bethany's smile didn't falter. "Interesting. Maybe she got nervous and put it back on the shelf. Happens." Angela took one slow step forward. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the edges of it could cut glass. "You are going to regret every word you've said to me today." Bethany chuckled. "Is that a threat?" Angela tilted her head. "No, that's a promise." Bethany's eyes narrowed, but before she could reply, another voice echoed down the hallway, firm, authoritative, and unlike any tone that had been heard that morning. "Excuse me," it called, sharp and unbending. "Where is my wife?" Bethany froze mid-breath. The guards turned toward the open doorway, like schoolboys caught doing something they weren't sure was allowed. The voice that had sliced through the corridor now drew closer, steady, sharp, and unmistakably commanding. Heavy, deliberate footsteps approached. Then Jonathan Jackson stepped into view. He wore a navy wool suit that clung clean across his broad shoulders, a tailored coat still buttoned from the morning chill, and in his right hand he held a slim leather folder, closed but firm. His eyes, deep, sharp, almost too still, scanned the room in a single glance, and when they landed on Angela, every muscle in his face shifted, not in panic, not in confusion, but in calculation. His jaw tensed, not out of fear, but control. "Angela," he said calmly, his voice low but cutting through the air like thunder inside velvet. She turned toward him, her breath breaking for the first time in minutes, and the edges of her strength momentarily folded as her eyes welled. "They took me back here. They wouldn't let me call you." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to stay upright. Jonathan moved past the guards without seeking permission. His tone was composed but carried a depth that demanded response. "Is someone going to explain to me why my pregnant wife has been detained, questioned, and humiliated in a store where we had an appointment that I personally confirmed?" His gaze found Bethany, and in that moment, the smugness she wore like a second skin slipped. Bethany stammered, straightening. "Sir, we had reason to believe there was suspicious behavior." She matched a previous incident profile. "There was a misunderstanding." Jonathan's brow lifted just slightly, but it was the kind of expression that made grown men doubt their intelligence. You accused my wife of theft based on what? Her appearance, the color of her skin, her being alone in a boutique where, according to your own policies, she had a scheduled appointment. Bethany opened her mouth, searching for footing she no longer had. It wasn't personal. We just have to be vigilant with people who don't normally shop here. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. People like her, you mean? Silence. Dense. Paralyzing. He pulled the leather folder from under his arm and laid it flat on the small desk beside Angela's untouched purse. With slow precision, he opened it and removed a single, embossed identification card. He held it out, not with force but with finality. Jonathan D. Jackson, United States Federal Judge, Southern District of New York, Special Authority on Civil Rights Violations. His voice did not rise. It didn't need to. Bethany's face drained of color. Her mouth hung open, words catching on the edge of disbelief. Jonathan continued, his eyes locked on hers. So now I want to know who authorized detainment of a private citizen without evidence. I want to know what policies gave you the right to deny her access to her own phone. And I want full access to the store's surveillance footage, timestamps, audio logs and staff incident reports. Immediately, his tone shifted, still calm but sharpened with judicial steel. This is no longer a customer complaint. This is a federal matter. The guard stepped back without a word. The younger one turned away entirely, visibly rattled. Angela stood silently beside her husband, shoulders shaking, not from weakness, but release. She hadn't cried, hadn't screamed, hadn't begged. She had survived the small room, the empty chair, the false accusations, and now her voice had returned through him. Bethany stumbled over her words, barely able to lift her gaze. I need to speak to my district manager. Jonathan didn't move. You'll do that after we're finished here. Until then, no one leaves this floor. His tone was final. It was the sound of doors closing, not behind him, but on those who had stepped far beyond their place. Silence engulfed the room, thicker than anything spoken. Bethany stood still, her lips parted, but unable to shape a word. Her hands fidgeted near her hips, instinctively smoothing the hem of her blazer, as if some physical gesture might restore the control she had just lost. But there was no reclaiming it. Not now, not after that name had been spoken, not after that federal seal had stared back at her from Jonathan Jackson's identification like a quiet judge on a bench. Angela remained by her husband's side, no longer trembling, but watching with a cool, burning alertness. Her face no longer carried humiliation, it carried memory. She was absorbing everything. The shift in tones, the sudden stiffness in everyone else's posture, and behind her calm, there was still fire. Jonathan took a slow step forward, deliberately positioning himself between his wife and Bethany. His voice, though low, filled the room with absolute weight. I will ask this once, and clearly, on what basis was my wife accused of theft? What concrete evidence was presented? Was a camera reviewed before she was pulled from the showroom? Or did someone simply look at a pregnant black woman and decide that was enough? Bethany tried to speak, but only a stutter emerged. We received a report. A report, Jonathan interrupted, his brow arching. Filed by whom? Or was it just an assumption made by your staff, or perhaps by you, directly? Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. I may have misunderstood her behavior. She seemed evasive, nervous. Jonathan exhaled through his nose, slow and full of disbelief. You mean pregnant, alone, trying to stay calm while being watched like a criminal in a place she was invited to? He turned slightly, addressing the security guards now. Did either of you ask her if she needed water, if she was feeling lightheaded? She's in her 3rd trimester. Neither man responded. The younger guard kept his gaze to the floor. Jonathan's hand remained steady as he reached into his folder again and drew out a pen and a lined notepad. He clicked the pen once, a sound that somehow made Bethany flinch, and spoke while writing. Names, full names of everyone involved in detaining my wife. I also want the contact information for the regional director and legal counsel for Bliss Baby and Company. Bethany's face paled further. Judge Jackson, surely we can find a way to resolve this without escalating. He cut her off, tone razor sharp but not raised. You escalated this the moment you put your hands on my wife's dignity. Now we proceed properly. He turned to Angela, offering her the notepad and pen. If there's anything you remember, specific words, movements, how they treated you, I want you to write it down now, while it's fresh. Angela took the pen. Her hands were steady now. She wrote in silence, and every word she penned was like stitching back a piece of what had been torn. Meanwhile, a small crowd had begun to gather near the customer area outside the hallway. Whispers floated in the air, curious, concerned, but cautious. A sales associate had noticed the disturbance and tried to shoo them away, but something about the energy had changed. This wasn't a minor issue anymore. There was power now, present and visible, and it was demanding to be reckoned with. Bethany finally spoke again, this time in a lower register, the tremble in her voice barely concealed. I'd like to extend our apologies to your wife, on behalf of the store. Perhaps we can offer. Jonathan turned back toward her, eyes like stone. Don't insult her with a coupon or a gift bag. That moment's gone. His words carried finality, not of anger, but of record. Your apology will come in writing. Your store's statement will come through official channels, and your policy on racial profiling will be reviewed by legal experts who don't make assumptions based on someone's purse strap. Bethany blinked, eyes glistening now, but Jonathan had already turned away. He extended his hand to Angela. Come on, we're done here. Angela stood slowly, slid her arm into his, and together they walked out of the room, leaving behind the folding chair, the blinking camera, and the silence that had no words left to offer. As they stepped back onto the polished showroom floor, all conversations around them fell away. People watched, some with sympathy, some with unease, some with guilt, but no one said a word. They didn't need to. Angela didn't look at anyone. She didn't have to. She had survived this, not quietly, not with her head down, but with every ounce of her dignity intact. And as the door to Bliss Baby and Company slowly closed behind them, the calm of the street outside felt almost surreal, like the first deep breath after holding one's lungs too long underwater. As the glass door whispered shut behind them, Angela gripped Jonathan's hand tighter. The air outside was crisper now, or maybe it just felt that way after what they had walked through. The morning sun had shifted, casting soft shadows across the sidewalk where people passed by. Dog walkers, moms with strollers, a man pushing a cart of books, unaware of what had just unfolded in the boutique behind them. But Angela knew, her husband knew, and that was enough. They paused near a stone planter outside the store. Angela took a breath, deeper than before, one that stretched all the way into her ribs. Her eyes closed for just a second, and when she opened them again, her expression had changed. She looked up at Jonathan, not with relief, but with gratitude so profound it needed no words. You didn't have to come that fast, she said softly. Her voice, though gentle, carried the weight of what she had just endured. Jonathan turned to her, his hand brushing her cheek with a quiet tenderness. I told you I'd be there. 25 minutes, not a second longer. For a moment, they just stood there, two silhouettes in the morning light, one carrying life, the other carrying justice. Then Jonathan stepped slightly forward, turned toward the boutique, and addressed the store manager who had now appeared hesitantly near the door, hovering without approaching. His voice was clear, firm, but not theatrical, like a man who didn't speak for attention, but because silence had already failed. Let me be clear, this wasn't just about my wife, this wasn't about a misunderstanding or a policy flaw. What happened in that store was a reflection of how people like her are seen, assumed, reduced. He didn't raise his voice, but even the people across the street began to slow their steps. He continued, his gaze unwavering. Every year, we prosecute cases of discrimination that begin just like this. It's always the same story: misread behavior, standard procedures, customer confusion. But beneath every excuse is the same root: someone believed they were better. Someone believed they had the right to humiliate a stranger because of the story they invented in their head. The moment she walked through the door, Angela stood beside him, chin slightly raised, her presence radiating more than pain. It radiated truth. Jonathan glanced back toward her, then said the words that would leave the crowd around them breathless. I'm not standing here because I'm a federal judge. I'm standing here because I'm her husband, and because if no one draws a line, they'll do it again. To the next woman who walks through that door with brown skin and no one at her side, a woman near the storefront gasped softly, Another man took off his sunglasses. Even the employees behind the boutique window seemed suspended in place, as if unsure whether to hide or apologize. Then Jonathan turned back to Angela, placed one steady hand on the curve of her belly, and said quietly, "Just for her. Our child will not grow up thinking this is normal." Angela's lips curved, not in a smile, but in something deeper, a promise. She nodded slowly, then leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder as they began to walk down the sidewalk away from the store, away from the stain of that moment. Behind them Bethany watched from the glass, pale, still, a reflection of her own undoing. The door remained open, but the world had shifted, and as the couple disappeared around the corner, hand in hand, the wind picked up gently, scattering a few golden leaves across the street. The city resumed its rhythm, but something had changed. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable, because honor is not granted, it's not gifted, nor offered out of courtesy, it is owned by birth, by choice, by truth. And when someone tries to take it, dignity does not beg, it rises.